The answer is no. What's up, guys? Alphonse here, and here we are to talk about whether or not the King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna, must perish, must die for the sake of the story to continue. Whether or not we must take the King of Curses' life. Oh, what a shame if he were to perish before our very eyes. I know his many fans, myself included, would be in great pain. But yeah, I don't think so. And let's actually talk about why. What's up, guys? Alphonse here. Fun fact, I have it on me, and I keep it on me at all times. And a fun fact about Sukuna is that he has it on him, and he keeps it on him at all times, but unfortunately there's an infinite barrier between him and the person he wants to prove that this is always effective. So let's talk about Sukuna and why I ultimately think he doesn't actually have to perish for the plot to continue. Notably, look at the word I used here. Perish. Cease existing. Die. Like, legit, I don't think he actually has to go just yet. Obviously, there are some conditions. Notably, I do believe that in the long run, Sukuna needs to go, but specifically within the context of the major fight that's going on right now, aka Gojo versus Sukuna, I don't think Sukuna actually has to perish here. In fact, I think there's a 99.99999996743% chance that he's not going to perish here. I don't see Gege getting rid of Sukuna right here, right now. And there are a couple reasons why. First things first. He's sort of sitting inside Gojo's sun. And it's be pretty hard to get him out of Gojo's sun. At least by Gojo standards. Notably, there are some mysterious things up in the air on whether or not, like, Gojo can affect the soul. Apparently, Unlimited Void can. That's why Megumi got hit. Magical stuff. But I don't think that necessarily means that Sukuna is going to be, like, specifically targeted by Gojo and removed. Gojo does start the fight off by saying, hey, you made the mistake of perishing in Itadori once. That means I can get rid of you and Megumi can still be alive. So maybe, but I don't think it works that way, considering that both Sukuna and Itadori were still alive the last time Sukuna perished, and that's how we had the whole in-chain set up. It's pretty much impossible to get rid of Sukuna without also getting rid of Megumi. And unfortunately, I hate to say this about Gojo, as much as a Gojo blazer as I am, he's still human. He's too kind. He's too sweet. He's too loving. He's not that loopy. He's very loopy, don't get me wrong. He is very loopy, but unfortunately, he's not that loopy. He still does love the guy he spent, what? A solid 10 years raising. You can definitely tell by how he's approached the fight so far. And you can see that Sukuna is specifically making use of that. If you were to ask me, there's absolutely -15 reason why Megumi is still sitting in his body. Absolutely negative reason in terms of a physical front. 4 arms is better than 2 arms. That cockroach may have been wrong when fighting Itadori, but specifically in Sukuna's case, he has likely the most experience fighting with 4 arms. Going back to 2 arms, he probably has some experience doing that, but it is lesser than his 4-arm state. Also, in terms of just raw beef, raw girth, raw size, raw muscle mass, yeah, obviously, the beefy original 4-arm Sukuna is way more stronger than a... That's such poor English. Much stronger than a 15-year-old kid who grew up under Satoru Gojo. And thusly, the main reason Sukuna is keeping his face the way it is very specifically because he wants to use it against Gojo. And it's clearly been working. No matter what Gojo says, no matter what Gojo claims, yeah, it's having an effect on him. If he was just fighting 20-finger Sukuna, then I think the fight would be going a whole lot different in terms of Gojo's mentality, but unfortunately, by keeping Megumi's face, he's gonna keep Megumi's face and keep that chance that Megumi could be saved, could be restored by the King of Curses, which will hold Gojo back indefinitely within this battle. Another thing that keeps me believing that Gojo will not actually manage to delete Sukuna in this battle in particular is because, I hate to say it, I really do, Sukuna has too much hidden. And now, don't get me wrong, Gege is no stranger of taking his mystical, magical, mighty pen and instantly slicing a character out of the narrative way before anything or everything that they have to show is revealed. And we're talking major characters too. Look at characters like Nanami Kento, supposedly Gege's favorite character. Look at, well, to be fair, we did see pretty much everything Nanami had to offer, but you never know. He could have kept growing. Look at characters like Nobara. Sure, I 100% agree with the Nobara fans. I hope she's still around, but we have not seen a current image of her in literally 3 years. It is a longer time period now, I'm pretty sure. I saw this somewhere. I may be wrong. Feel free to correct me, but it has been a longer time period than Gojo being sealed in the last time we saw Nobara actively alive within the manga. It has been that long. Like, it has been over 3 years. So, Nobara cooked way before her full potential was reached. Heck, even look at characters as recent as Yuki Tsukumo. You know, one of the longest lived special grades, if not the longest lived or the most ancient special grade. We had been waiting on Yuki to cook for years, ever since she was introduced way back when in Gojo's past. And guess what? Fried after showing the most basic variation of her technique, and I guess maybe the maximum. A lot of people assume the black hole is the maximum. I don't think so. I think it is literally just Yuki doing a last resort kind of thing. I don't think that was actually her maximum. So we didn't get to see Yuki Domain. We didn't get to see Yuki Maximum. We didn't get to see anything but Yuki use her basic technique in Simple Domain. Whack! But it shows that Gege is willing to do it. Heck, even look at a character like Ryu Ishigori. Once again, no Domain, no Maximum, nothing else. He just got one tap by Sukuna. So obviously, no, 4 taps, 3 slices and then 1 starting slice. But still, we know for a fact that Gege is more than willing to bang a character out of existence before their full prime, their full power, all their abilities is shown. However, I do not believe, I need to preface this. I do not believe that Sukuna is the main villain. I've made this argument before. I will continue to make this argument until Gege himself reaches through or makes a statement somewhere and I'm just proved wrong. Sukuna's not the main villain. He may be the first major villain we meet, but he's not the main one. And thusly, I don't think he's on Kenjaku levels of final fight importance or significance. I see Sukuna as a subsection to Kenjaku, because he literally is within the narrative. However, that does not mean I put Sukuna on the same level of someone like Maizo, or someone like Ryu, someone like Earl, someone like the Disaster Curses in general, the whole group put together. Sukuna is not on that level in terms of sheer narrative importance. And thusly, there is too much hidden about him for Gege to let him go this quickly, this fast. There were times where I thought Gege would insert something that would allow us to get what we needed from Sukuna without him actually having to get it within the Gojo vs. Sukuna fight. There were tiny little glimpses of flashbacks, both within the Yorozu fight, even earlier than that when Earl was mentioning him. There were times where I thought we were going to get a Heian's past arc, in a similar vein to the Gojo's past arc, where we simply cut back to literally 1,000 years ago, and we see the state of the world. We see how things were acting. We get to see Sukuna in his prime. But unfortunately, we have yet to see that. And I'm sorry. Gege is an absolute and indubitably insane madman. Do not get me wrong. Do not get me even close to wrong. However, even I don't think they're so insane to introduce one of the most amazing designs this side of the Mississippi and throw it away. Forearm Sukuna just looks way too cool. Way too cool. And right now, it's entirely possible that Forearm Sukuna could appear next chapter. At the time of recording, the latest chapter is 235. It could happen literally in 236. The opening page is Sukuna, Huda! And he goes into the full forearm state. But considering he's been sticking to Megumi's body, I feel like it's highly unlikely we are going to see Forearm Sukuna within the battle between Gojo and Sukuna. I feel like that's being saved for later, or maybe saved in a later incarnation of Sukuna, considering there are certain things that I think are going down, and going down for real. But once again, we'll get into that a little bit later in this video. So that's the first big thing, that I believe Gojo does not have a chance of actually executing Sukuna here. I believe Forearm Sukuna is just a little bit too important, a little bit too gassed, a little bit too saucy to actually get executed here and now. Next thing that's super duper important, to this day, we have no idea what Sukuna's actual technique is. And by we, I mean the collective fandom, and myself included, we call it Shrine, because Yorozu called it Shrine. But if you had to ask me, I highly doubt Yorozu even really knows what Sukuna's technique is. And considering Sukuna has gone out of his way on numerous occasions to be super duper coy about the nature of his technique and even its very name, I once again go back to the fact that on a narrative level, if I'm putting characters in tiers in terms of their straight narrative importance, main antagonist and main protagonist, Yuji and Kenjaku, are at top. Despite what it may seem for the past 13 chapters, and for Yuji even longer, the main protagonist and main antagonist, they're dancing and prancing at the top. Then I would legitimately put Gojo and Sukuna above everybody else. Everybody else. You could literally name any other character in the series, and I believe they fall below in importance in comparison to Gojo and Sukuna. We had the Gojo's past arc, literally named for Gojo. But to be fair, it's known as the inventory arc, but that is literally the Gojo's past arc. That is a Gojo-centric story with a bit of Geto and Toji thrown in there. And for Sukuna, once again, I don't believe he's the main villain, but there is precedent and reason that the man's been around since chapter 1. In terms of sheer narrative importance, he is too high up to be sacked without a reveal of his curse technique. There are some series that have done very similar things like this, where they have not given you a whiff of what a character's true abilities are and then mention it later in a data book. I do not see Gege doing that with Sukuna. I see the real technique being revealed. However, right now, as it stands, I do not believe the real technique can be used against Gojo. Once again, if the real technique was viable against Gojo, if it could get past the neutral limitless, Sukuna would have not swapped bodies. Okay, he would have swapped bodies anyway, because Megumi is easier to control than Yuji, but I don't think he'd be relying on the 10 shadows. He would not be so worried about getting Maharaga prepared. If he had ways to work around the limitless already, he would not have gone out of his way to find other ways to work around the limitless. It's simple as that. And at the same time, I don't see it being possible that the technique is able to be introduced right now and used on Gojo to any sort of real effect. And I also, unlike the 10 shadows technique, I don't think Sukuna's technique is so random, minor, and fodder that we're just going to get it dropped randomly. Like, it's not just going to bounce off the Infinity Shield. There's got to be something more behind Shrine's true nature. And thusly, that massive thing, that big, hefty thing, also sort of saves Sukuna's ticket to life. I 100% believe that there's absolutely no way Sukuna's going to perish before he shows us his real technique. And thusly, I don't think he's going to perish against Gojo. Because Gojo, unfortunately, and I agree, a lot of people in the other videos or in other comment sections talk about the fact that Gojo is a narrative issue. His abilities are a narrative issue. I'm literally planning was Gojo a mistake video. Trust me. I understand 1,000,000% that Gojo is a narrative issue. I understand why a lot of people think the easiest way to get rid of them is just to off him. But my big thing about that is if he's so powerful that he literally breaks the plot, how do you expect him to be offed? That's my big question. If y'all can tell me how he does that, how that happens, how Gege can get rid of him, with the prison realm being gone and the inverted spear being gone and him being literally faster and stronger than literally everything else in the verse, then that would be one thing. But with that being the case, and with Sukuna seemingly being his only rival up to this point in any way, shape, and or form, I don't see Sukuna going out without revealing his true technique, but it's obvious he cannot use that against Gojo within his current state. I think it's as simple as that. So there's another major reason to me why Sukuna ultimately needs to survive. The next major thing about Sukuna and his 99.9%, like really put a whole bunch more nines on the end of that, survival, is that, well, I hate to say it, but he can't actually perish here. We don't know where that last finger is. Now, don't get me wrong. Sukuna in chapter 222 makes the pretty solid guess that who has the final finger? Gojo Satoru. He makes a really good assumption that, well, most likely the reason you couldn't find the final finger, or Ume, is because Gojo has it. He would want to postpone Itadori Yuji's execution as long as he could. There's no way he'd actually want the boy to perish after eating all 20 fingers. Thusly, he probably has it. However, there are many times within Jujutsu Kaisen where a character has made an assumption, and that assumption has been proven wrong. So while Sukuna believes his final finger is somewhere in Gojo's back pocket, even though the current Toji pants he's wearing do not have pockets. Do they have pockets? I don't think they have pockets. I don't think they have a back pocket, at least. We've seen the back of Gojo. I mean, I don't see no pockets back there. So ultimately, Sukuna literally can't actually perish. Like, so Sukuna we know. Maybe you can make a pretty solid argument that Megumi would end up perishing in this battle, assuring Gojo as the strongest in history because he literally beat Megumi. Like, oh, wonderful. But simply the fact that that finger is out there, it's a jiggling, wiggling unknown, and we know for a fact that any one of the fingers can allow Sukuna to incarnate. It's very likely that, say, best case scenario happens for the good guys. Ultimate case scenario, Gojo pulls out, smacks his meat on the table, and just beats Sukuna straight out of Megumi. And that 19 fingers of Sukuna perishes just like that. Ultimately, that doesn't actually get rid of him. Sukuna is pretty much... Okay, I can't necessarily use... I can't use the Voldemort example because I have to... I didn't like Harry Potter growing up, so I didn't read it. But I've heard it's a very similar situation to the Horcruxes. At best, I see the 19 fingers getting erased. And then the last finger comes into play. So that's another reason why Sukuna literally cannot die. Like, literally, he cannot. He literally cannot. I know there are a bunch of theories on how Nobara could be used to get rid of Sukuna, how Itadori could be used to get rid of Sukuna, all that junk. I get it. I understand all of it. However, I don't really see it. I don't really see him perishing to Satoru Gojo, specifically because he literally can't with that last finger, wiggling and dangling up there in the plot. Another reason why I do not believe that Sukuna will end up perishing to Satoru Gojo, the strongest sorcerer of the modern day, is because ultimately, when you look at it from a certain kind of perspective, Sukuna is more than willing to incarnate in literally something else that's called a cursed object, soaked in Sukuna's cursed energy. I mentioned the other finger being a major reason why Sukuna cannot go within this fight, but remember, Itadori is now basically a living, breathing finger. It's noted in chapter, let me double check, let me make sure I don't speak wrong, but it's noted in a chapter, I believe, I'm taking a shot in the dark. I think it's 222 as well. Well, let me double check. I do believe, I do declare that it's mentioned to Itadori that, hey, broski, let me love with you real quick. You kind of not actually... Okay, it's not 222. It is before that. Let me see. I want to make sure I read this right. So, Yuji is talking with Amanai. I believe Amanai? I forget this guy's name. But we see that there is discussion in chapter 220. And Amanai says, or maybe what I don't have is pride. That's all. Anyway, I wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't know much about you, but I know what you did. And that saved Kurusu. Thanks. We still have a chance. Wait! I heard what happened. Can you still fight? Sukuna isn't in you anymore. That doesn't matter. He never helped me anyway. Yeri said now I'm like an object steeped in his cursed energy. Besides, I'd eat anything to slay that creep. So, it's firmly established, and very specifically, there's an image of a finger shown when this statement is made in chapter 220, that Itadori is now a cursed object steeped in his cursed energy. And with that being the case, even if that mystical magical final finger is completely disregarded, is completely forgotten about by Gege, that fact is way too recent to have been forgotten. And to be fair, you can definitely argue the finger is that missing finger is also way too recent to be disregarded. But Sukuna now has a living, breathing cursed object that is steeped in his cursed energy that is comparable to one of his fingers. And trust me, we don't know how perfect or imperfect the transfer was from Itadori to Megumi. And thusly, that is another major reason why Sukuna ultimately cannot go. Because it is simply not possible. Because an object steeped in his cursed energy still lives and breathes and walks and talks and is watching the fight between the main vessel and the strongest sorcerer. So there is that as well. And now, you may be wondering, okay, Pencil Man, you've been giving me all these, like, in-plot reasons or like somewhat meta-narrative reasons why Sukuna cannot perish against Gojo Satoru. But if you, like me, are a certified, licensed, and registered Gojo Glazer, you may be wondering, now hold on there, pencil man, you talk to me. Give me a good character reason why Sukuna is unable to perish just yet. Sure, you brought up his form, his abilities, the fact that he has other cursed objects lingering around, whether they be his fingers or even a living being. But why? Why on the character level can he not perish yet? And that's simple too. I may have mentioned this in terms of Itadori being a main character and Sukuna not being a main villain. But I do 100% believe that Gojo has won. He has beaten Ryomen Sukuna in a very similar vein to how Goku won on Namek against the Emperor of the Universe, Frieza. If you'll notice, there's a very similar comparison between Frieza and Goku, and Gojo and Sukuna. One, a long-standing emperor of creation, a symbol of evil that lasted and rooted itself in form decades upon decades, or who knows how long Frieza was actually Emperor of the Universe, the entire Cold family, but they are a symbol of absolute evil. And remember what Goku is. A prodigy, a monster, a beast, a Saiyan raised up with extreme power that awoke to a new power against the Emperor of the Universe, when the Emperor of the Universe took away something that the strong Saiyan loved. And remember how Goku versus Frieza ended. Goku didn't actually slay Frieza, but he beat him. He won. And who ended up actually getting rid of Frieza? Well, it was the next generation. The future come to pass. It was Trunks who actually managed to slay Frieza. And ultimately, I believe, in my heart of hearts, no matter what, no matter how much I've been clowning on him, ignoring him, and disregarding him, as much as the fact that Gege literally forgot to draw the character, I believe the final battle that Sukuna deserves, the final battle that Sukuna warrants, is a battle not on the physical level, because I do believe Sukuna is still way too powerful for the person I believe he needs to have this final battle with, but on the spiritual level, on the level of suffering, on the level of souls, I believe that Sukuna Ryomen's final fight should be with Itadori Yuji. And a similar vein to the final battle against Mahito. Do I believe that Itadori should get the slaughter on Sukuna? Maybe. I'm not sure about that one. I do believe Itadori deserves a win over Sukuna, though. And as much as I write Sukuna off as not the main villain, I believe Itadori is more required for the Kenjaku fight. I still 100% agree with the idea that Itadori and Sukuna are major opposites. I call them rivals, but I don't think Sukuna cares that much about Itadori. That's the unfortunate thing. Sukuna ruined Itadori's life, but I don't think Sukuna cares that much about Itadori. But with that being the case, I do believe Itadori deserves some sort of justification, some sort of victory over Sukuna. In a similar vein to he got the victory over Mahito. Did he get the absolute dub? Did he get the 100% victory royale against Mahito? No, never. But what I do believe is that he will have a very similar situation to what happened with Mahito. If you remember, Yuji did not beat Mahito alone. Simply did not. You could argue that Yuji is very, very powerful now. Maybe you could argue that he could beat Mahito on his own. I think it's hard to argue that because Mahito's domain and Itadori's lack of immunity to that, unless he has some sort of soul resistance stuff, but that's going down a scaling path. But simply on the narrative level, Itadori was not able to beat Mahito alone. And in a similar vein, I see that Gojo cannot defeat Sukuna alone, in terms of defeating Sukuna and getting his actual win con of saving Megumi. So I do believe Itadori will play a very vital role in that, specifically with the ability that is set up within Chapter 222 of the body swapping that appears to exist between Itadori's new abilities. And thusly, I believe that ultimately, within the battle of Gojo and Sukuna, I don't see Gojo actually getting the absolute victory royale and slaughtering Sukuna. It is simply not his right, not his job, and it would play into a contradiction. One of the biggest underlying themes and one of the largest questions about Gojo vs. Sukuna on the subtext level is, what should the strongest do with their power? Sukuna's answer is simple. He believes that the strongest, by right, should have everything, and that everything else beneath the strongest should simply grovel or fight for their measly little worthless existence. Gojo believes that the strongest should use their power to uplift the next generation and continue a legacy of good in their wake using that power that they only have. And unfortunately, on a narrative level, it simply would not make sense for Gojo to beat Sukuna entirely on his own and truly erase Sukuna entirely on his own. I believe that there should be at least one of the next generation who come and help Gojo do that. And if there's anybody of the next generation who deserves it, it would be Yuji Itadori. And considering there is a very specific indication being set up about Itadori's new ability within Chapter 222 that has gone unmentioned, entirely unmentioned, for a long span of time now, literally over 3 months, I believe Gege is in the kitchen, wrist whipping with such a thing. And also, of course, that's the character dynamic reason. I've given you in-plot reasons why I believe Sukuna cannot perish against Gojo. I've given you meta-narrative reasons why I believe Sukuna cannot perish against Gojo. I've even given you character dynamic reasons why Sukuna cannot perish against Gojo. But also, let me give you a plot reason. A reason that I believe ultimately has saved Sukuna in a way he probably wouldn't prefer. Like I said, I don't believe Sukuna is the main villain. I don't even think he's Itadori's final antagonist, to be completely real with you. I believe there should be a catharsis for Itadori. I believe that there should be some sort of victory over Sukuna in the same way that Itadori got a victory over Mahito. But I do believe the person who has the final finger, the person who will proceed to cook with the final finger, and the person who's been using Sukuna as a pawn for the last 1,000 years and literally gave birth to the main character and the vessel of the King of Curses 1,000 years later, I believe Kenjaku will use Sukuna. And I specifically believe Kenjaku will use Sukuna for the conglomerate. Now you may be wondering, oddly specific, why do you think that? And the reason I believe it is because I do see 19 fingers of Sukuna disappearing. Once again, I do see them getting got. And considering a lot of y'all have convinced me that Sukuna may not fully count as a curse yet, unless he goes back into his forearm form, then it's highly likely that Kenjaku would not actually be able to manipulate Sukuna right now with cursed spirit manipulation. But I do believe Sukuna is a very important part of the merger, considering his life through Megumi Fushiguro's participation in the Culling Games is a major factor in whether or not the merger can begin. So thusly, if we were to want to extinguish Sukuna, give Itadori a cathartic win over the King of Curses, and simultaneously save it so that Gojo's ideology about the power of the strong and what they should do with it is preserved, yet at the same time get the maximum narrative use out of Sukuna and have his full powers, his true form, and all that be manifested truly before Kenjaku, I believe the best way to do it is this. Gojo beats Sukuna. He wins. You could argue that happened at the end of 235. Personally, I don't believe the fight's over. I believe it's still going to go on a bit longer, but it is still there. Sukuna hobbles, perishes. 19 fingers of him does. Then, as everyone thinks all is well, boom, the merger begins. And people wonder, what's the condition that's been met? And they realize that ultimately, Sukuna's not gone. In fact, they can sense Sukuna's overwhelming power growing nearby. And they see that the King of Curses has been reborn as the ultimate creature, the culmination of all the cursed energy across all the colonies of all the people in Japan. And now we get the true final battle. You could argue this is after the saving of Megumi through Itadori's intervention in the battle through Gojo's restraint of Sukuna. You could argue that this would lead into Itadori's victory over Sukuna through a direct interfacing with the soul of Sukuna controlling the conglomerate. But of course, that's just my speculation. I believe that Sukuna still has a long way to go before the entire man is defeated. And I believe that there is solid evidence, both in narrative, out of narrative, meta-narrative, with character dynamics, I believe all on every single level. Sukuna has a ticket to the next life. Will that next life be full of fervor and wonderful things for him? Maybe not, but I want you to remember. The conglomerate shall be based on Tengen. And also remember that Tengen, upon evolving, ended up becoming very similar to Sukuna. So wouldn't it be something if the king were to be reborn as the monster of 10 million curses, only to fight the next generation and the strongest sorcerer once again to truly see what it means to be the strongest? I don't know. That's what I think. I think Sukuna's just fine. I do not see him perishing anytime soon. But, like I said, that's what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure the notifications so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below. Each one for as low as $1 $1. You can link exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Recliner Plays, and Red Wolf 4765. I'd like to give a very big thank you to our $5 patrons, Sean, Red Wolf 4765, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, and Demex LND. And a very big thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Idemokami, and Calvin Elder. And to give another very big thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. And a very big thank you to our $25 patron, Ignew.